What if a mirror could show you more than just your reflection? Would you dare to look at it at night, when shadows come alive and secrets of the past seek to be revealed? Today's story takes us to an object that seems harmless, but hides a dark and disturbing mystery: Grandma's mirror. For as long as I can remember, my grandmother's old Victorian mirror had remained covered in a corner of her house. She always told us stories about how that mirror had a special power, one that should not be taken lightly. When I was a child, these stories filled me with a strange fear, a feeling that there was something beyond the visible, something only the mirror could see. My grandmother always insisted that no one should remove the cloth that covered it, but she never explained why in detail. She only said that the mirror was a portal, a window to a world that did not belong to ours. After my grandmother passed away, my mother decided to ignore her warnings and uncover the mirror. That act would mark the beginning of a series of events that would change our lives forever. That first night, I clearly remember the atmosphere at home. There was a palpable tension in the air, a sense of expectation mixed with fear. My mother was in the living room, looking at the mirror with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. When she finally removed the cloth, we all fell silent, as if we were waiting for something to happen. And it did. That same night, as we were getting ready for bed, a strange noise from the living room alerted us. When we arrived, we saw something I will never forget: my grandmother's reflection in the mirror, but it was not a comforting image. Her smile was not that of the loving woman we remembered, but a disturbing grimace. Her teeth were sharp, almost animal-like, and her eyes were two dark, empty pits filled with an unfathomable evil. From that night on, things began to change. The mirror seemed to have a life of its own. Sometimes, when passing by it, I felt as if someone was watching me from the other side. It was not just a feeling, it was something real. I could see shadows moving on its surface, shadows that had no source of light in our reality. My dreams became dark and full of nightmares in which the mirror was the protagonist. I saw my grandmother in those dreams, but she was not the same. She seemed to want to tell me something, but her words were incoherent, mixed with macabre laughter and screams of terror. One night, I woke up with the feeling that something was wrong. I went down to the living room and, to my horror, found my mother standing in front of the mirror as if hypnotized. Her eyes were empty, just like my grandmother's in the reflection. I tried to wake her up, shake her, but it was as if she was not really there. It was then that I noticed the mirror reflected something more than my mother's image. There was a figure behind her, a shadow that moved and changed shape. That figure looked at me directly, and at that moment, I knew we were in danger. Desperate, I turned to investigate the mirror and its origin. I discovered that it had belonged to a family that had been devastated by inexplicable tragedies. Each member who had owned the mirror had met a premature and violent death. The stories were terrifying, but they all had one thing in common. The mirror always seemed to be present in the darkest moments of those lives. I began to understand that the mirror was not just an object, but a door to something much more sinister. I tried to convince my mother to get rid of the mirror, but she was too influenced by its power. I decided to take matters into my own hands. One night, while my mother slept, I wrapped the mirror in the cloth and took it to the basement, hoping its influence would be less there. But despite my efforts, the mirror's malevolent presence continued to haunt us. The shadows in the house grew denser, and the strange noises became more frequent. I felt we were being watched, as if something was waiting for us in the darkness. Finally, after a series of disturbing events, my mother decided it was time to act. Together, we took the mirror to an antique shop, hoping to get rid of it once and for all. But the shop owner, an older man with a worried expression, warned us that the mirror had a dark energy that could not be ignored. He told us about other similar objects he had encountered over the years, and how all of them had a malevolent power that attracted lost souls. The man's warning only increased our fear. We decided to take the mirror to a desolate place where no one could find it. That night, we drove to a remote forest and buried the mirror, hoping its influence would dissipate in the ground. But even as we buried it, we felt something watching us from the shadows. We knew the mirror would not leave so easily. After getting rid of the mirror, things improved a bit. The noises and shadows in the house decreased, and we began to regain a sense of normalcy. However, we never forgot the nights of terror we had lived, and we always feared the mirror could somehow return. Every time I passed by a mirror, I couldn't help but look at it with distrust, hoping not to see my grandmother's sinister smile. With time, my mother and I tried to return to our normal routines, although fear always throbbed in the back of our minds. Every creak of the house, every shadow at the corner of our eyes reminded us that the mirror had once been in our lives. One night, while reviewing old family photographs, I found an image of my grandmother when she was young, standing in front of the same mirror. Her smile was calm, but there was something unsettling in her gaze, as if she knew something we did not. I decided to investigate more about my grandmother's life and discovered that she had inherited the mirror from her own mother, who had also told similar stories about its power. This cycle of terror seemed to have affected our family for generations. The more I delved into the history of the mirror, the more I understood that its influence was older and more powerful than we had imagined. In my investigations, I came across an old diary belonging to an ancestor who had tried to destroy the mirror. The diary detailed rituals and methods to break the mirror's connection to the dark world to which it belonged, but warned of the risks. I decided that I had to try it, despite the danger. I convinced my mother that this was our only chance to free ourselves from the evil that haunted us. That same night, we went to the forest where we had buried the mirror. The atmosphere was heavy, and the air seemed to vibrate with dark energy. We unearthed the mirror and began the ritual according to the diary's instructions. As we recited the ancient words, we felt a growing presence around us. Suddenly, the mirror began to tremble, and a dark figure appeared on its surface, with the same black eyes and sharp teeth we had seen before. With determination, we continued the ritual, and the figure in the mirror began to fade, letting out a scream that echoed in the forest. Finally, the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, and a sense of relief enveloped us. We felt that the connection to the dark world had been cut, and the evil that had haunted us for generations had finally been defeated. We returned home with lighter hearts. For the first time in a long time, we slept without fear of shadows and strange noises. The house regained its tranquility, and our lives returned to normal. But we will never forget the nights of terror we lived and the battle we fought against the cursed mirror. Friends, this is the story of Grandma's mirror, a tale of how a simple object can harbor indescribable evil and how courage and determination can overcome even the darkest horrors. If you like this story, don't forget to follow our channel, leave a like, and comment on what you thought. We are always here to bring you more chilling stories. See you in the next tale.